On September 7, 1943, the State Soil Conservation Committee established a conservation district upon the initial petition and subsequent vote of 327 Fairfield County landowners to mitigate soil erosion and protect water quality. Through the years, this effort has taken many different forms, including some of the most extensive farmland preservation efforts in Ohio, implementing on-farm practices, and working closely with urban development.
I'm Amy Boyer.
Kevin Elder.
David Brandt.
Conservation in Action for Our Future.
Conservation in Action for Our Future.
Conservation in Action for Our Future. Thank you.
Amy Boyer now works for the Ohio Department of Agriculture, but served for many years as the office manager and district engineer for the Conservation District.
You know, I think traditionally we started out as an agricultural-based county, but development, being in the kind of center of Columbus has really changed the landscape over the last, 20, 30 years. The soil and water staff, I think, if you look back at our timeline, has really changed to embrace the urban sector. Water flows downhill, so we have the same issues, whether it's in agriculture or in an urban setting. And I think we've embraced that and meet the challenges and needs of everybody in our community. Your traditional agricultural community understands drainage maybe a little more than people who come from a more urbanized setting, but obviously a lot of the same issues are there. There's more education involved, I think, when you deal with the urban people, but they're happy that someone's out there that can assist them, and the Soil and Water has been that agency, I think, over the years in Fairfield County. Well, the Conservancy, the Soil and Water was the original petitioner of all of those, both the Upper Hocking and the Rush Creek Conservancy in Fairfield County. So we have that history, and if we go to Buckeye Lake, we also have a lot of history, and we're very fortunate that we're going to be getting a watershed coordinator here soon to deal with some of the issues in Buckeye Lake. Obviously, Fairfield Soil and Water has been very active in the watershed coordination with both Buckeye Lake and dealing with Conservancy districts. I think we had a board that early on, when that program became available, were very supportive of the Soil and Water getting involved in the farmland preservation. We had lots of farmers and different landowners interested. So we got out in the forefront, and a lot of counties, they didn't start the program. I guess people are a little scared when it comes to putting a permanent easement, I think, on a farm, and our landowners embraced that, and I think that's wonderful. Everyone's embraced conservation, I think, in this county. Our commissioners, our federal partners, ODA, the Soil and Water. We've had a great board who have really pushed conservation, and we've been able to get a lot on the ground. And we're very fortunate here that we utilize all the opportunities available to us. I think we've been very lucky in the last, since 2000, since I've been there, we've had so much advancement in technology, and 75 years worth of engineering plans and access to information by landowner or by parcel with just the click of a button. Since I've been in the office since 2000, all engineering plans have now been put on AutoCAD. Technology has been wonderful. We can share data with contractors now that we used not to be able to do. GIS, or survey grade GPS, has allowed us to be able to survey things and then relocate that in the ground at a later time. And that's, with tile and different things, that's just revolutionary. I mean, we're very lucky to have that equipment and a board that has purchased that equipment for us to use. And obviously over the years our staff has declined, but technology has let us put as much on as we're not declining, I guess, in productivity.
Kevin Elder grew up on a Fairfield County farm and started his professional career with the Fairfield Soil and Water Conservation District back in the mid-'70s. He's served in many roles since then and recently retired as Chief of the Ohio Department of Agriculture Division of Livestock Environmental Permitting.
First of all, we had done conservation practices. My dad had a conservation plan back to 1951 on our farm. Working for the Soil and Water District, the Soil Conservation Service at that time made me aware and trained more in the conservation practices. Seeing the importance of conservation, especially in the county, the diversity of the geology, the diversity of the farmland at the time, and the different types of conservation practices were tremendous. I mean, we did a lot of different activities, everything from spring developments to contour strips. I remember doing the first contour strips with 12-row planters, which was unheard of. It made me more aware of soil resources and wanted to be able to design and help other farmers quite improve their land, basically. By the time I graduated and went to work for the Soil and Water District, which was the first real job I had outside the farm, the Soil and Water District was promoting conservation tillage and no-tillage. So I ended up, when I was working for the Soil and Water District, supervisors had no-till rental planters and drills, and I was a technician that basically assisted the farmers. And Dave here was on the board, Dave Brandt, was one of the leaders in no-till at the time, but I went around teaching farmers how to no-till with both the rental planters and planters that they might have had on their own. It was a new practice and one that was rapidly promoted because of the erosion control benefits at the time. We didn't realize at that time all the other benefits for long-term no-till that we have today. Probably the biggest thing in my memory was I rented the planter, we rented ground, I did it, and Dad was helping us harvest my ground, and he came and said, first of all, that piece of ground, he said, was too poor to raise a disturbance, and he came to church one day after hauling that grain out and said, guess what? And I said, what? I said, I bought a new no-till corn planter, and I about fell out of the pew. Those are the things that you like to see. It was encouraging to work with farmers back at the time on a lot of different practices. And no-till itself, it wasn't the actual planting as much as it was teaching them improvements of soil fertility, weed control, improving management overall as much as it was actually using the no-till planter. Livestock, when I worked at the Soil and Water District, was about on every farm. There was some type of livestock. Today those operations are fewer but bigger and still cover quite a few acres. And livestock need to be part of a system as a whole to get all the benefits. Yeah, there are some issues to manage, but at the same time there are benefits in soil quality, organic matter, improvements in the soil itself if you can work livestock into your cropping mix. Well, one of the issues has always been a conservation plan. Once it's completed, we lost contact with producers. They weren't needing to be involved as much. The Conservation Security Program and some of the other conservation programs continues that interaction with producers. It encourages producers to continue making tweaks, changes. It keeps involvement and actions going to further improve the soil quality beyond what the minimums are. The EQIP program a lot of times is on some of either the livestock facilities or some of the incentives to do additional water and sediment control basins, filter strips. There's a lot of different EQIP practices that can add to the farm itself and improve the farming operation. I'll go back to some of my personal history, and I still take pride today in looking at some of the conservation practices that were installed almost 40 years ago. Matter of fact, one of the farms that my brother owns in 1976 was one of the first grass waterways was installed that I helped do the inspection to certify that. We're back in '76, it's still there today. Some of the ponds, some of the waterways around the county, the livestock manure storage structures. Last week I went by Zollinger's sod chute that was put in the '70s up on Lake Road. There's just tremendous amounts of things that were done that some of the owners today probably don't realize what was constructed. Years ago, it's still benefiting soil and water quality today. Probably the most amazing one was down on 664, where there was a gully you could have parked a D6 cat in and not seen. And it was on a 14% slope, and today it's on one of Kilbarger's farms that has cattle down there, but that gully is a grass waterway and a water control structure at the bottom that you drive by and probably don't even recognize. But it's been protecting that resource for 40 years.
Today, David Brandt is known around the world for his work with long-term no-till and cover crops on his Fairfield County farm. Groups from around the country and internationally regularly come to visit his farm to see the results of years of careful conservation of the soils. His work, both professionally and in service on the board with Fairfield Soil and Water, helped shape his views that have shaped his farm and inspired countless other farmers around the world.
Well, working with Soil and Water, they allowed me to do work with no-till drills and no-till planters. At that time, it was just fairly new in the 80s, and was able to look at different pieces of equipment and different sprayers and actually help each individual producer on a one-to-one basis of understanding how to do a much better job no-tilling and answering questions in those situations with crop problems. I thought generally most of the farmers responded real well because we could show them about less tillage, saving some time, fuel, and with the one-on-one partnership that we had with producers, it really worked well because it opened up an avenue where they could actually be mentored or call somebody that had done it and solved problems and work through it. The biggest changes we saw, and it was a lot of fun back in the 80s and 90s to do things, we'd always try to have a field day somewhere once a year in the county. So you think about the 70s where they were converting conventional drills with fluted holders and 55-gallon drums of water to make them heavy enough to work, you know, and you'd pull that thing 600 feet and it'd have a wad of fodder 10 foot tall in front of it. That's how some of these equipment companies learned how to modernize their equipment. And of course today I don't think there's a piece of equipment not sold today that wouldn't no-till because of the way the frames are built and the linkage and the way the units plant crops anymore. And it led to me learning more about the soil types of the area and how to understand and make suggestions so that they can do a really neat job of returning the rewards from the yield, you know. Well, I think back then it was just kind of a trial and error, and guys were just kind of looking in to see because universities wasn't supporting us very well, but we had a lot of help from the local districts and investing some money in some equipment that farmers could use, which I thought was a great deal, where we could use it once or twice and understand how to make it work, and then go out and purchase it after you saw the success from it. Well, at that time we had a horn planter and a drill, and we at the Soil and Water Board and supervisors allowed me to take my time to deliver that piece of equipment, adjust it to the planter, make sure the farmer was having success. You know, you may be there a half a day or a whole day just getting him familiar with it because it was something he hasn't done, and then the follow through with maybe had some chemical problems or maybe the crop didn't come up, and make some suggestions on how to correct it. And I really think that was the real inroads for our county to be quite successful in the no-till cover crop situation. You can just look around and see all the things that the Soil and Water district's done to improve the county and to improve the environment and the financial stability of the farmers. I just think it's great that we're now celebrating 75 years, and looking back to when I was on the board with John Ricketts and Mr. Wagner and Hugh Fox, what great times we had comparing notes and understanding what's going on, and the diversity of those board members understanding how important it was to have conservation on the land.
It is impossible to imagine where Fairfield County would be today without 75 years of service from the Soil and Water Conservation District board members and gifted staff. This brief look at the past has set the stage for a bright future in Fairfield County and the soil and water its residents depend upon every day.